Liberal fascism. Certainly one of the more attention-grabbing titles and cover. After all, how could liberals be fascist? We all know that fascism is when corporations and the government become one. And we all know corporations are right-wing. We all know FDR fought the fascists, so how in the heck can you call liberals fascist? The fact is, Goldberg argues, that American progressives, forerunners of today's liberals, did many things that today we would call fascist, and fascists did many things that today we would call progressive. Discovering the roots of this seeming contradiction is the goal of his book, but that doesn't mean he's calling liberals Nazis. As he says, the main goal is to dismantle the granite-like assumption that American conservatism is somehow or another an offshoot or cousin of fascism. In fact, the word fascist seems to have just taken on a life of its own nowadays and become a modern-day equivalent for heretic, used to shut the other side up. George Orwell noticed this back in 1946 when he said, "The word fascism now has no meaning, except insofar as it signifies something not desirable." Momentarily, though, let's take Jonah Goldberg's argument at face value. Let's say fascism has more in common with the left than the right. What does it matter? In short, while it appears we'll thankfully never relive the boot stamping on a human face forever fascism, many of the fascist toxins still live on in our political blood. And fascism may return in a different, more motherly, nannying form. In short, a kind of liberal fascism. And if we don't learn our true history, then we're doomed to repeat it. If you asked any reasonably educated people what fascism is, you'd probably hear words like dictator, genocide, militarism, war, racism, eugenics, right-wing, anti-Semitism, big business. And while many of these words describe fascism, we need to distinguish between the symptoms and the disease. Imagine taking identical tree seeds, but planting them in different nations. Local environmental conditions would produce different-looking trees even though you started out with identical seeds. It's the same idea with fascism. The fascist seed grows differently in every country because it must adapt to local history, politics, grievances, prejudices, etc. But just because the trees end up looking slightly different doesn't mean they are different at the core. So then, if we cut off all the symptoms of the fascist disease, what do we find at the core of fascism? In short, totalitarianism. A religion of the state where individuals are secondary to the people or the state or the common good, where everything and everyone must be aligned to the nation's objectives, and a leader that can embody the will of the people, driving the nation forward and removing anyone who stands in the way. The ideological roots of this totalitarianism stretch all the way down to the French Revolution. You see, before Mussolini was a fascist, he was a socialist, until he realized that uniting the people of the world from the same class would never work. A new kind of socialism was needed, one that operated within the nation-state. Hitler's Nazi Party, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party, drew on the same intellectual roots and combined it with German racial superiority and anti-Semitism. Socialism and nationalism were just some of the intellectual fruits of the French Revolution. But, you might say, that still doesn't explain how Jonah connects American progressives to the fascist movements. Well, here's how. By the mid-1800s, the ideas of the French Revolution had spread to Germany, creating political pressure for democratic institutions. Germany's leader, Otto von Bismarck, had a stroke of genius. Don't forcefully resist this call for democracy, but use the strength of the movement against itself, and give the people what they might ask for in a democracy, and implement social insurance, health care, the 8-hour workday, etc. The benefit of this top-down socialism was simple. The people stay calm, and you stay in charge. According to Goldberg, the intellectual founders of American progressivism drank heavily from the ideas of Germany and Otto von Bismarck, including future President Woodrow Wilson. But, you might say, the progressives were the do-gooders. They cleaned up the meatpacking industry, fought for social welfare, and safer working conditions. Sure, they did that. But they also believed in eugenics and were convinced the state could create a pure race. They were imperialists. They were openly and proudly hostile to individualism. They imposed their morality on the nation by spearheading prohibition. They believed the constitutional system of checks and balances was outdated because it was a barrier to their own ambitions to remake society. Indeed, Goldberg argues, it's hard to look at either progressive presidents Wilson or FDR and not see many of their policies as fascistic. During World War I, President Wilson created the first modern propaganda agency that created millions of posters, pamphlets, buttons, you name it, and had men giving millions of speeches all over the country to whip up patriotic support. The Postmaster General was given authority to deny mailing privileges to any periodicals which dissented or questioned the government, effectively shutting them down. A blind eye was turned towards vigilante justice and against unpatriotic Americans. FDR and the New Dealers invited industry after industry to write the codes and regulations under which their industries would be regulated. Government goons smashed down doors to impose domestic policies, and FDR questioned the patriotism of anybody who opposed his economic programs. The list goes on. But when the horrors of fascism were exposed with World War II and the Holocaust, the progressives distanced themselves from their own past and rebranded themselves as liberals and redefined fascism as being anti-Roosevelt and right-wing. Now, Jonah Goldberg goes out of his way a lot to say he didn't write a 400-page book to accuse modern-day liberals of being crypto-Nazis. He wrote the book to set the record straight on the ideological roots of fascism. But I think there's a more important takeaway. While we rightly recall fascism's horrors and abridgments of many rights, we have to remember that fascism wasn't sold as an evil movement, but as progress and hope. The 19th and 20th centuries' modernization, industrialization, and secularization created a sense of alienation among individuals. Fascism's all-for-one and one-for-all spirit, the sense of purpose and belonging to a movement, gave people something. In fact, maybe the worst thing that we can forget isn't that fascism was evil, but that it was optimistic. And as Jonah notes in his afterword, although his book is titled Liberal Fascism, this temptation is present on all sides. And while thankfully it appears the fascism we all know and hate has died forever, a more friendly fascism may still take its place. Fascism with a smiley face. Hey guys, it's Nick. So, liberal fascism. I barely touched on a lot of the stuff that Jonah presents in his book, and probably my favorite chapter was on fascism and economics. As you know, this channel is on economics, but so many of fascism's tactics have survived and are still in use today, and you can see it in that chapter. It's been a few years since the book came out, so if you haven't read it, I'd recommend you check it out. If you use my Amazon affiliate link below to buy the book, or anything else on Amazon, I get a little kickback, which enables me to make more awesome videos for you guys. And if you like books on history, economics, big ideas, then let me send you an email when I post a new video. Sign up on my website, thenickWright.com/email, or by subscribing to my YouTube channel. Till the next video, I'll see you later, guys.